Well, and people don't, and it's that whole, yeah, that's the thing. It's like people are manipulated into thinking, because I think everybody's scared to say, hey, you're going to be in for a ride, and your demons will going to get you, like anything. That's in, like, in my experience, with the whole thing we just talked about. That's a challenge in my business that I never saw coming, right? I mean, it's just like your inner stuff's going to catch up with you. Like, this is going to be the biggest crash course in personal development you ever take on, and it's probably it's like a building project. It's going to take a lot longer than you think, and the end result will look nothing like what you thought in the beginning, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I always say, like, create your business like a piece of art. Like, learn the bits you need to learn, but embrace the process. It's about painting, not just the picture at the end. It's about the process of making music, not just the bloody song at the end, right? And there's so much more to gain for yourself, for your growth, for what you can create, if you just embrace that process and not constantly chase shortcuts. It's just, driving me crazy.
Heroes are an inspiring group of people. Every one of them, from the larger-than-life comic book heroes you see on the big silver screen, to everyday heroes that let us live the privileged lives we do. Every hero has a story to tell, from the doctor saving lives at your local hospital, to the war veteran down the street who risked his life for our freedom, to the police officers and the firefighters who risk their safety to ensure ours. Every hero is special and every story worth telling. But there is one class of heroes that I think is often ignored: the entrepreneur, the creator, the producer. The ones who look at the problems in this world and think to themselves, you know what, I can fix that. I can help people. I can make a difference. Then they go out and do exactly that by creating a new product or introducing a new service. Some go on to change the world. Others make a world of difference to their customers. Welcome to The Hero Show. Join us as we pull back the masks on the world's finest heropreneurs and learn the secrets to their powers, their success, and their influence, so you can use those secrets to attract more sales, make more money, and experience more freedom in your business. I'm your host, Richard Matthews, and we are on in 3, 2, 1. So welcome back to The Hero Show. My name is Richard Matthews, and today I have the pleasure of having on the line Anke Herrmann. Anke, are you there?
I'm here.
Awesome. Glad to have you here, Anke. Where are you calling in from today?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm calling in from the south of Spain.
South of Spain. I know. We were talking about that before we got in. I can't wait to visit Spain and South France and all those areas over in Europe at some point in our travels. For my audience who's following us around, we are still in California visiting my dad. We're on our way the next couple of weeks. We're going to be going down to go see Zion and Bryce and a few other places in the U.S., so that should be fun. What I want to do with you, Anke, before we get too far, is just dive into your bio real quick, and then we can talk about your story. So Anke is a business coach and tech expert. She's author of Taming the Tech Monster. 18 years ago, she quit her software developer job in the UK to start her own creative business in Spain. Now she uses everything she's learned in business, tech, creativity, and psychology to help tech-frustrated coaches with a big vision build profitable online businesses to serve more clients better. So what I want you to start with, Anke, is why don't you tell me what it is that you're known for? What's your business like? Who do you serve? What do you do for them?
Well, what I'm known for, people usually know me as the tech monster whisperer. Like, the tech monster. Sometimes I've even heard, the tech monster. So that tech monster definitely stuck. And it's usually how people find their way to me. And people are mostly coaches, experts, educators, people who have a mission. They want to share something and they realize, well, I want to bring all this online. I want to offer my services online, my programs online. But then when they start, this whole tech thing feels like this giant jungle where it's easy to get lost in, and there's predators lurking everywhere, and and not everybody is tech frustrated. Sometimes because they're all visionary and creative and they have these big ideas, but when it comes down to the nitty gritty to make that happen, the eyes glaze over. So that's basically what they come to me with. Like, I don't know where to start. I don't even know what to ask. This is all too much for me. Can you help? So, and the job is literally to help them hack a path through that jungle and guide them through to make sure they don't waste time and money buying yet another tool that isn't actually the right thing because they're solving the wrong problem. So it's to keep it simple and to guide them through that process one step at a time so that they actually end up with a functioning online business that doesn't take up all their time, with tech and boring admin stuff. So they get
Yeah,
to do what
yeah.
they really
And
want
with
to
the
do.
way technology is going lately and tools for everything, it's really easy
Yep,
to end up with a lot of things you're not using or not using well or using improperly.
yep.
And it's a definitely a I like the term tech monster. It can be you can build yourself a wonderful monster that no one can understand.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it is often perceived as this like scary monster and this threat, and the book cover actually has a little, and it's actually a little dragon. And I always say, look, what feels like a scary monster is really just a friendly little dragon that wants to play, and that's basically what I help people see, so that take the whole stress out of it. So
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk then about your origin story, how you got into this, right? I know every good comic book hero has their origin story. It's a thing that made them into the hero they are today. And we want to hear that story. Were you born a hero, or were you bit by a radioactive spider that made you want to get into tech consulting? Or did you start in a job and eventually move to become an entrepreneur? Basically, where did you come from?
yeah, well, that's a kind of quite a windy road, really. And I always, looking back, I think one of the biggest influences was actually the right at the beginning, because I grew up in East Germany, like literally
Mhm.
behind the wall. And it always felt to me as if it was, you know, unlucky, and I was born sitting in this cage, like there's these kind of
Yeah,
bird cages where you sort of sit in there, and it's not big enough for you to spread your wings, but the bars are far enough apart for you to see that there's something else out there. So that sense of like, if there's a way to get out here, I just can't wait to get out
yeah,
to basically explore all the things that I was sort of not allowed to do. And so I ended up, that went so far that I ended up getting out of East Germany before the wall came down, but that's a story for another day. And it was a one way ticket, right? It took a while, and one day you get this letter and you say, okay, it's your turn. You're out on that. That's your train 2 weeks down, and you literally leave. You couldn't come back. You knew you couldn't kind of come back to visit anybody you leave behind. You haven't really got a clue where the heck you're going. Like, all you knew was what you could see from visitors and the odd little bit of news that came. So you literally jumped into the unknown with no way back. And at the time, it was just, you just took one step at a time, and all I could see was, hey, the cage door opened, and I can fly now. So I never perceived threat. I never perceived like, oh my God, change is scary. It was just like, hey, it can only get better, right? And I think comparing, and I think that's given me the that attitude, like, hey, what's the worst thing that can happen, right? Because anything after that always felt like, well, if I don't like it, I can go back, so it's no big deal.
yeah.
So I've finished uni as a translator, so I'm a linguist by trade, basically. And in the very first job I ever had, it was an engineering company, and they were bought out by an Australian company, and I met who was going to be my now ex-husband, and he was Australian, and he says, hey, like, why don't we move to Australia? I'm like, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? I can come back if I don't like it. So there was literally nothing. I had nothing on it. And I didn't even know how rare that was at the time. It was just like, oh, okay, sounds like fun. Let's go. And
Sure.
it took me about 2 or 3 months to realize that working as a translator in Sydney was not a good idea. It took a long time to even get a job. Then it was, still looking back, the worst paid and most stressful job I ever had. And I sent out my resume to anybody who'd have it. There weren't many people who'd have it. And for Australian standards, I had nothing on it, because my qualification and the only job I'd had was like overseas. Oh no, that doesn't count. Like, and in the end, there was basically a recruitment agent who said, hey, I've got a job for you. I've got a friend of mine who runs a software company, and you two are going to get on like a house on fire. And he was right. I'm still in touch with that old boss. Right. And I was hired as his, what was it called? Personal assistant. But the thing was, he was in the process of selling. He would now be perfectly my client. Like, he was one of these big picture visionary people who was in the process of selling the company. So I had 8 hours a day, all his support. Hey, oh, you're interested in software. Well, do you want to go to that conference? Do you want to take that course? So he was super supportive, and I got into programming, and it was literally, holy, what is all that? Right? It was fascinating, and I knew the future was going to be in that space, but oh my God, I'm way too old for this. I'm a woman, I'm not that technical. So there was literally like, I didn't know, like, I don't know. And when every time you start, it's you kind of look for an explanation for something, and then you don't understand. You ask a question, you don't understand the answer, because there's, again, like, there's also many things in there, and then you're, okay, what's this and what's that, and it's just like, oh. And I was really struggling for a bit, and people say, hey, you can get a job at this, and I don't even know where to start, right? And one day it dawned on me, wait, this is just like a programming language is just a language. It's just another language. It's just like a real language, but to be honest, just simpler. It has a smaller vocabulary, and it has a very nicely structured grammar. And the moment I could see it like that, it's like, oh, well, I know how to learn a language, right? So now, okay, like, now I know how to go about this. Like, let's just break this down, and don't start and try and read Shakespeare on the first day. And it literally made, like, the whole field made itself visible to me over time, right? And it didn't really take that. I was so totally, immersed in it. And it was also the time that was the mid 90s, and people quickly said, hey, you should take this industry exam, you can get a job at this. Oh, but I don't know whether I really want to work in this male dominated industry. But then what's the worst thing that can happen? And next thing I know, I work in software, and I'm like, this is cool, right? And so yeah, that was me in software for quite a few years, that in Sydney, and then I moved over to London because that's where where everything was, and until I went on a holiday and started learning Spanish and started going on trips, like a little bit like you, so just for the fun of it, just for traveling. And I came, and I took a trip to Granada, and I thought, well, I don't know, there's something here. This place has something. There's something in the air. I don't know. I keep coming back. I kind of wonder what it would be like to live in the old part of town, in the historic part of town. And then there was literally that question, like, how on earth would I pull this off? And yeah, and that's when I thought, well, if I could do anything. And I mean, I must say, the whole software industry at the time also took a turn that I didn't really like, because all the big companies that I worked for, they all were going towards, oh, software projects need to be outsourced. So all the projects were less and less technical. They were more and more, just dealing with outsourcing companies. And I'm like, well, do I still want to be here in 10 years time? And so I took the plunge and thought, well, if I can do anything, I turned my passion for sewing into a hobby, and let's just go, let's just move to Spain. What's the worst thing that can happen? So that's how all that came about. So
And then you started your career helping coaches with the
well, not
tech stuff.
yet. No, no. The first business I started was a sewing business. Like, I thought, well, if I could have anything, I'd make custom made dresses. I'd been sewing as a hobby all my life. So I knew how to sew, and I knew how to make patterns. I was totally obsessed with flamenco. I didn't have a clue about what a flamenco costume actually, what's different. But well, we'll find out. And so the business I started was, I spent many years making dance costumes for flamenco artists. And it was, I was the only, after I burned myself out with that. And people started, hey, can you help me with this website? And I don't know, and can you help me with this business thing? And so it only, it took basically, I made dresses for over a decade. So, and then only I burnt myself out. And that's when I then thought, oh, well, actually, I don't want to sit here at 60, at the age of 60, pumping out 50 dresses for a performance, working through nights. And then again, okay, what do I really want to do? And so all I knew then was I wanted to support other people who just started their own business, turned their passion into a business, and found, holy, like, my upbringing has not prepared me for this. Like I literally hadn't got a clue and probably made every mistake under the sun. And I thought, well, if I could save one soul from making all these mistakes, I want to do that. And then I did coach training and then basically pivoted around to what I do now.
That's you were not wrong. That's definitely a winding story from software to moving different countries to starting a dress company to moving into doing what you do now. That's it's cool to see how you've gone um, from being essentially in a cage in East Germany to running several businesses and learning how to do software, which, software in the 90s, that's like right at the beginning, right before the dot-com boom and bust. Um,
Right through
so
that. Yep, yep.
yeah, so you got to see a lot of those things firsthand. That's really cool. So what I want to find out from you is about your superpowers that you've developed over your career, right? Every iconic hero has a superpower, whether that's a fancy flying suit made by their genius intellect or the ability to call down thunder from the sky. In the real world, heroes have what I call a zone of genius, which is either
Mm.
a skill or a set of skills that they were born with or they developed over their career that really sets them apart and help their people slay their villains, right? So they can come out on top in their journeys. And the way I like to frame it for my guests is if you look at all the skills that you've developed, there's probably a common thread that ties all those skills together. And that common thread is probably where your superpower is. So what do you think your superpower is that you've developed over your career?
Yeah, no, I've actually thought about this a lot because as you can imagine, doing all these things, I often thought like, oh boy, what's wrong with you? Why can't you just like, why do you have to sort of jump from one thing? Why can't you? Until I realized, well, actually, I always only do one thing. And the superpower really is that I see a jungle in front of me, like what looks like a mess. When I see the path, I see the pattern, I see the map.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I'm like, oh, okay, if I want this, if I want to unravel that, if I want to create this, it's almost like, okay, well, I need this. Okay, I need to start here. And it's like super clear, it's instant. And I don't know, I can see the pattern, it's almost visual. And it applies if somebody sends me a photo for a dress, I look at the dress and I'm like, yeah, I know how to make it. It's the same with software. It's the same with the translation. It's the same with the business, and that's one thing that I've seen. That's one of something that has become apparent that the process of creation is always the same. So
Yeah, yeah.
instead of kind of beating myself up of having changed careers so many times and having done so many things, I thought, well, they're only just different expressions of the same thing. So it's always that same creative process. It's like taking that whole big vision and finding the path and breaking it down and basically making it happen one step and one iteration at a time.
Yeah, yeah. It's a similar to what I call my superpowers. Like I've always been able to see the systems behind things, like the way
Yep.
things work that other people don't see.
Yep.
And like just as an example, my wife laughs at me when we watch movies together because like I don't watch the movie the way normal people watch the movie. I'm like counting the cuts and like what type of cuts they're using, and I see the lights, like how many lights they have on the scene and where they're lit from and what kind of like focal lengths they're using, because like I like cinematography, but I also like I see it all. I see the system, not the end product. And
Yeah.
like that's part of the enjoyment for me. And I do that with everything, and it allows me to pick up skills quickly. um,
Yep.
yeah, and just understand the way things work because you're not seeing just the surface level stuff. You're seeing all the stuff that makes the surface level stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the structure underneath, and it's interesting because in languages it was the grammar I was most interested in. Like in software, it's the workflow. It's not the pretty colors on the front. Yeah, yeah, I can see the point of that. But where for me the fun is, it's the like how to structure, the whole thing underneath. And one thing I've learned that has been like that goes in that same line is almost seeing through when people come and say, hey, I want this, actually seeing through what they're really asking and not what they're saying.
Hmm.
Right. And that's that, that saves your life in software, and it saves your life with making dresses. Because usually and a classic example is always people would come and say, hey, I want like a pencil skirt that's all straight down to the knee, and then it flares out and has all these pockets and the ruffles on. And I'd be looking like, and I know that most dressmakers would go and then make pencil skirt, and and the dressmaker and the client would always go, the dancer would then go, oh, it's a lovely skirt, but I never really wear it, right? Because I would then look at them and say, well, okay, you want a pencil skirt? I don't think so. What you want is you want a costume that doesn't make you look fat on stage, right? And your idea of, because when you don't really know much about how this all works, you've heard somewhere that pencil skirts are flattering, right? So you ask for a pencil skirt, but I'm going to go back and say, okay, what is it? Let's make sure we actually solve the right problem here. Because if the job is to make you something that is flattering and still lets you move, which the pencil skirt doesn't do, but then we have a different problem at hand, and we can use colors and texture and stretchy materials, and we have all sorts of tools available to achieve that, so that you look stunning and you can still move, right? And that same questioning, or actually seeing through what people are really asking, that's gold. That's definitely saves software projects, and it saved a lot of sewing projects, and it still works like a treat.
That's what I think my wife has had to learn with dresses, because she's well endowed upstairs, and so the she has to buy dresses that what is it called, Empire waist,
Mm-hmm.
because they come in right under the breast, and that it actually slims her a lot, because if the waist is somewhere else, they'll drape off of the front and then make her look much larger than she is.
She needs to find herself a good dressmaker to get those custom made, because nothing's more flattering than when something is like really well fitted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Like, so my grandmother was a seamstress, and so I actually learned. She made me learn how to, like, I made a robe, from she made me make the patterns, and I made pants, and I made
Oh,
shorts at
cool.
one point. So I have skills, not like I could go out and make dresses or anything, but I know how to put a pattern together and like those kind of things, because my grandma was like, you have to learn these things. So
That's very
like I
cool.
have
Very cool, grandma.
yeah, I have an idea of like what you're talking about when you're doing those things, but it's definitely a skill, and it applies, because I know everything from, my wife and I are foodies, so we're really good with cooking, and I learned a little bit about seamstress stuff. I do a lot of stuff in the business tech world, and the systems for how you build things, they're they move from one to the other. Right, which is why one of the things, like, I found it's actually really helpful to learn to pick up new skills. Like, I'm learning the piano, with my son, and I'm learning archery with my son too. And it's interesting that this skill of learning a
Yeah,
system directly applies, right? And it doesn't,
totally.
it makes all of your skills sharper no matter where you're enhancing them.
Yep, yep, totally agree. Could not agree more.
Yeah. So
Mm.
I want to talk about the flip side of your superpower then, right? So, which is, of course, your fatal flaw, right? And just like every Superman has his kryptonite, or Wonder Woman can't remove her bracelets of victory without going mad, you probably have a flaw that's held you back in growing your business, something you struggled with. For me, it was a couple of things. I struggled with perfectionism for a long time, which kept me from
Mm-hmm.
actually shipping product, because, if I could tweak it just a little bit more, I might not get rejected in the market when I bring it there. And I also struggled with self-care, which brought itself out in having terrible relationships with time, and terrible relationships with my clients' boundaries and whatnot, and not actually setting good boundaries. So I'd let my clients walk all over me. Um, but I think more important than what the flaw is how have you worked to overcome it, so that you could continue to grow your business and continue to grow. And hopefully sharing your experience here will help our listeners out a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think it's fascinating how similar we are in so many ways, right? I mean, one thing. I mean, they kind of both. There's two things that are, but they're quite related. Like, one thing is that as you might have noticed, I'm very excitable, like very passionate about things. So I get excited about a project. So I'm way too inclined to say yes to stuff I shouldn't say yes to. So, I mean, and no, and I mean, there was a whole part when, especially when I started the sewing business, and when the sewing business started picking up, that became a real problem. That's what had me burn out. Yeah, that was the whole thing. I did not know how to say no. I was Mrs. Good Girl, Mrs. Yes is the default answer. And there was a lot, like, the not saying no was the same, but one comes out of creative inspiration and excitement, or overexcitement. But the bigger problem was when it was fear based, when my clients, I actually for years I thought, oh boy, my Spanish clients are driving me crazy because they're very, hey, I want this and I want it now, right? And even if you're sick, well, I'm sorry about that, but I still want my dress. So they were very, and so if you come in there and you don't really know how to say no to things, right? You think, oh my God, like, and on top of it, you build a business that is entirely, that grows by word of mouth. So
Yeah.
when somebody, and on top of it, I had no idea about business. So I understood that, well, if somebody comes and wants something, like it's my job to give it to them, right? So I had no idea that I could actually choose who I want to work with. And on top of it, then, okay, well, I need you to bring this dress to the theater. I don't have time to come to you. Oh, yes, of course. Now, the first few clients, that's not a problem, right? You're way too happy to have a client, and that even this crazy idea starts to take off. But, it got more and more, and people then, you say yes to one, and you can't say no to the next. And the whole time, I felt I couldn't say no because, oh my God, she's going to be really upset. And then if she's upset, she won't come back again and she'll badmouth me and my whole business goes down the drain. So, and I was you know, in that vicious cycle like for years, right? Until I got so burned out that it was so, like physically, emotionally, I was just got to the point where it's like, you know what, I'm done with this. Like, if this is what the dream is, I want nothing to do with it. And that was the first time that I thought, you know what, the first time somebody wants me to take a dress wherever, you can just go, and do it yourself. And that was the first time that I had the courage to say no. And what happened was she goes, oh, all right, well, I'll pick it up on Monday then. Right? And that's when I got to see that the whole time, that pressure that I'd been kind of suffering under was really self created. That I saw, well, wait, I have no way of predicting what will and won't upset people. And and no doesn't mean they will be upset, just like yes doesn't mean they will be happy. So I got to see a few things in life, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that really turned that business around, and and basically had me shift to what I'm doing now.
Yeah, it's interesting because you think, and a lot of young entrepreneurs go through that. I know I went through that. And you realize actually that when you have good, solid, clear boundaries, that you actually get more respect from your clients,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and
And
they
it's the
respect your
kindest thing you can
boundaries.
do.
Yeah,
Mm.
and they it helps you grow because you can focus, you can increase your quality, your service output, everything.
Yeah.
When you learn how to set good boundaries.
Yeah.
And so, good on you for learning that. And hopefully people can
For-
pick that up.
yeah, I wish other people don't take that as long as I did, but I learned eventually. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I learned fairly quick. It was, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 years of like trying to, burn the candle at both ends and saying yes to everything. And I once decided, I thought, I was like, I wonder if like, is sleep actually necessary? And so I found out that it is. I made it about 3 days before I was puking in the bushes. Um, so it makes you sick. In case you're wondering, don't try that at home. Um, but yeah, so like been there, done that.
Yeah,
uh,
definitely.
so I want to talk then about your common enemy. And every superhero has their arch nemesis, right? It's a thing that they have to fight against in their world.
Hmm.
And in the world of business, it takes on a lot of forms, but I want to put it in the context of your clients, right? The ones that you work with now with your Tech Monster brand. And it's a mindset or it's a flaw that they have when they come to you, right? And you have to fight to overcome it constantly. That if you had a magic wand, you could just bop all your clients on the head and not have to deal with that arch nemesis. What is the arch nemesis for you?
People are influenced by, well, make 6 figures in 6 weeks by following my 6-step proven success formula, or the version, and basically the variation of learn Spanish in 30 days, right? So everything, I mean, it's not necessarily their fault in that sense. Like when you don't know, obviously you're going to have a look what's around, and every software vendor, every, every coach, every person who teaches whatever, there's always here, follow my 6-step proven success formula, and this is going to be, you're going to have this thriving in 6 weeks. And I'm not saying it doesn't necessarily have to be slow, but there's no way in hell that you can promise that it'll be fast. And especially with tools, it's just driving me crazy, because it's always that, build your own website, 3 clicks, no coding experience required, like build your own app,
Yep.
and wherever it goes, it's always that, the subtle, the manipulation of expectations is that this is like a 12-week kind of thingy. And I've had people come and say, well, I've just left my job. I've got money till June, so I need to get this thing off the ground, right? Oh,
You're
well,
like,
welcome.
you should probably have like 2 years at least.
Well, and people don't, and it's that whole, yeah, that's the thing. It's like people are manipulated into thinking, because I think everybody's scared to say, hey, you're going to be in for a ride, and your demons will going to get you, like anything. Because that's in my experience, with the whole thing we just talked about, that's a challenge in my business that I never saw coming, right? I mean, it's just like your inner stuff's going to catch up with you. Like, this is going to be like the biggest crash course in personal development you ever take on, and it's probably it's like a building project. It's going to take a lot longer than you think, and the end result will look nothing like what you thought in the beginning, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I always say, like, create your business like a piece of art. Like, learn the bits you need to learn, but embrace the process. It's about painting, not just the picture at the end. It's about the process of making music, not just the bloody song at the end, right? And there's so much more to gain for yourself, for your growth, for what you can create, if you just embrace that process and not constantly bloody chase shortcuts. It's just,
Yeah.
driving me
I have
driving me crazy.
the same discussion with so many people. I was like, you're not just going to start a business. Like, a business is a lot of skill sets. It's technology, and it's communication, and it's learning
And
marketing, like
sales and
how you
marketing
put
and
together marketing and sales, and like how you actually put together a message, and how you find a market, and how you actually,
yeah,
especially with the coaching space, you have to learn how to teach. And then people are like, if I sell a digital product, right, there's no cost involved, so I've got 100% margins. And I'm like, if only that's the way it worked. And like, I coach
yeah,
people. I was like, you should be thinking like a big business. Even as you're selling an online product that has no margin, you should be looking at like 30% of a 30% profit margin. The other 70% is going to go into finding customers and running your business and getting staff to make things happen, right?
yeah,
That's the way big businesses run, and yours isn't going to be any different, just because the product cost doesn't have any deliverable
yeah, yeah. And
fees.
so the problem with it is that people spend so much time second guessing themselves. There's this constant, like, it's like having little kids in the back of the car. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? So they don't actually enjoy the journey. They're constantly second guessing, and they tend to give up way too quickly, because, like, well, this was supposed to be. I've had somebody say to me, it's like, well, this website thing isn't working. Okay, what happened? Like, okay, well, I put this website out there. Okay, out there, what does that mean? Well, I published it. Okay, and I've not had a single client from it. Okay, so when did you publish it? Well, it's about, well, let me have a look, 3 weeks now, right?
And like, they
And
didn't
you
run
think,
any
well,
traffic or do anything for
oh, no,
promotions.
nothing. No, we just
Like,
published it,
I just I just went out into the middle of the desert with no
Yeah,
roads or anywhere, and I built a gas station in the
yeah,
middle of the desert.
yeah,
And there's no roads, there's no market, there's nothing there. I just
no,
put it there,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's surprising me that no one's showed up in the middle of the
yeah,
desert to buy
yeah.
gas from me.
Exactly. And I think, like, these and people are super impatient with themselves when it comes to tech. There's also that kind of misconception, like, it's always about, because that's the thing, that's what they've been sold, that's what they get sold all the time. Everything quick fix, no skills required. It's almost like, don't worry, you don't need to know anything, you don't need to learn anything, and you just, like, buy my thing, and all your problems will go away. And then you have to sort of dismantle that, and put things into perspective, because most of the time they do much better than they think they do, right?
Yeah.
They just, constantly doubting, and there is so much time and headspace that gets wasted because people are like, well, I don't know, is this working? Why? No, and so
The
that's
one of the things I tell my clients to tell other people now is like, if it's worth your time at all, it's worth the next 10 years of your time,
yeah,
right? And all of the effort and skills and journey that's going to go into making that happen. And I don't know, there's just a lot of like I said, it's misrepresented expectations, right? Because they
mm,
think it's going to be cheap, and they think it's going to be easy, and they think it's going
yeah,
to, if you just use this one email tool or this one marketing tactic, that you're going to make a bunch of sales.
yeah,
um, and the problem is that occasionally that happens, right?
hmm,
Occasionally, for the rare person who just happens to get the perfect offer in front of the perfect audience, they make
yeah,
something really fast and it explodes for them, and they get featured on Forbes or whatever. Um, but that's
yeah.
not that's not the that's not real world. Those are the outliers.
Yeah, and sometimes there's also, things get missed. Like, not like when somebody has a lot of success fast, there's usually a part of the story that doesn't get told. Right? You see it a lot when coaches um, start out and have like a lot of success quickly. You find that they have come from that they were like a CEO of a company before, and then they just kind of moved into a consulting role, and they kind of do the same thing that they've already done, and the first clients were contacts that they were already working with, and so there's basically a whole set of circumstances around.
So, anyways, just have our editor fix that for you, Mark. That last couple of seconds was weird. Um, so yeah, those are the outliers, and it's not the standard way things go.
No, yeah,
So how do
for
you
sure.
how do you help your clients manage those expectations?
um, well, basically, I normally point out where, like, the big part that nobody talks about, right? As well, when people jump to the tools and they look at the tools and go, oh my God, I don't know, this was supposed to be simple, I don't get it. I will basically bring them back and say, well, okay, let's have a look. It's like when you go and install Photoshop for the first time, right? And you think, oh my God, so exciting, like I've got the best tool on the market, and and I've done that, right? Like I remember the first time I installed Photoshop, it's like, oh my God. And well, do you know how to use Photoshop? No, I haven't got a clue. Okay, no, but not a problem. I'll just read the documentation. I just go through, I just learn, right? And then I looked at the documentation and I found that I didn't understand anything, right? Because the tool assumes that you know about graphic design. Like the documentation of the tool explains how to use the tool. It doesn't explain well, it does, like, it assumes you know about color and light and filters and all of that, right? And it's the same with any other tool that people come across where you go, well, the reason you're struggling here is because there's all this thing here that you haven't got a clue about, right?
Yeah, it's
And
like
so what I can do is I can shorten your learning curve, and I can flatten that out because I can see. I always look at teaching and learning as connecting something unknown to something known, right? And if we work together, I can, just by how you ask the question, I can see what you understand and how I can explain something so that you go, oh, I get that, right? And so we connect something new to something that you already know, and then something else and something else, and you start getting a feel like, oh, okay, I can actually figure this out. And then you start get more, and then people get more adventurous, and then start trying out, and then it's that, like, that the addiction of progress kicks in. But it's literally that, and it's hard to find because not everybody, especially my clients, are mostly like 50 and over, so they haven't been taught this stuff at school. So everybody has learned and picked up bits and bobs here and there. So if they go and read something, or if they follow a video tutorial, there's usually something in there that doesn't make sense to them, right? So if we work together, I can pick this up and like, no, 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 it's you're missing that bit of information. And once you say, well, okay, this is the bit you're missing, then they go, now I get it, right? And it's so beautiful to see how empowering that is when people start to like, okay, so I'm not as stupid as I thought I am, so I can actually figure this out. And then they, and start to experiment and explore and
Yeah.
basically off and
It's
running.
it's interesting that it goes right back to the expectations, right? Because the documentation for
Hmm.
Photoshop assumes a certain level of education or a certain level of understanding.
Yep.
And the same thing, like I always like those commercials on YouTube for like the website builders. They're like, I am going to sit down with this website builder that is going to let me build my website in 30 seconds. And they're like, watch, click, 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 click. And then they have this website. And the thing that always cracks me up, I was like, the website looks great because when they sat down to it, they had a library of incredible photography, right? And their incredible photography was 80% of the design. And I'm
Yeah.
like, so someone comes to sit down to their website builder and they have zero photography to put in there. And they're like, I don't know why mine isn't pretty. And I'm like, because they lied to you. They set these
Yeah.
weird expectations that aren't true.
Yeah. On top of, and see, the other thing that people tend to jump to the tool way too quickly, right?
Mhm.
So people come, oh, I don't know, I want to start a podcast. First thing they will ask, what microphone do I need? And I'm like, well, until you have a really clear purpose, clear idea answer to the question, why would anybody give up their precious time to listen to you ramble? You don't need a microphone at all, right? And so it's the same with the website. Normally, even web designers have this problem constantly that they say, oh, like the clients don't send the content. People often come and have a website problem, but when you go, okay, so tell me what you do. Like, okay, if I come to your new website, what's the first thing I'll see? Well, I don't know. So usually, well, the website feels hard because you haven't got a clue what you're going to put on there, right? So it's
Yeah.
most of the time it's the work involves messaging and copywriting, and what are you actually trying to achieve here? What is it that you want to offer to people? Who you want to offer it to? So usually that's where the work is, right? And
Mhm.
so the people are always surprised when they find themselves like, I never thought this could be so much fun, right? And I'm always waiting for this moment. This moment always comes, when I'm like, did you just hear yourself say the text fun, right? And I've got it recorded, right? Because that's the thing. They realize that most of the work is actually creative. It's a creative process. And the
Yeah.
more you actually spend time designing the dress before you start cutting, right? And people always want to cut first, but I think, well, it might make sense to
Measured
think
fight
about
cuts
what you
cut
actually,
once.
well, that's the thing. And so when you slow them down and take them through that process, I'm like, what is it that you're actually trying to create here? What is it that you want to communicate? What does somebody need to know in order to make a decision whether you're the right help for them or not? Well, that's fun, and that's interesting, and that's
Yeah.
creative, and people enjoy that. And then all of a sudden, okay, if we now know that this is what we want to create, well, which tools make sense all of a sudden doesn't feel that overwhelming, right? So it's all slowing down,
I mean,
really.
that's one of the things I've done in my business is we've templated everything from home pages to about page stories
Mm,
to like how you actually talk to your clients about what they're what you want to do for them. And then when we sit down and actually talk to someone, it's like we're going to start with what's the problem that you're going to solve for someone,
mm,
because that's way more important than what does it look like on the website.
absolutely. Yep, yep,
um, and like that's the stuff, that's where the magic is, and the fun
exactly.
is. And then when you have all of that down, when you go to the website, you just start with, hey, are you, a parent who's struggling getting your kids to brush your teeth? We can help you with that. Right now,
Yeah,
it's like you know exactly where to start.
yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. And when you take people through that process and they realize it isn't about, struggling and fiddling where where the button goes and how to get because that's the thing. It's also when you look at, when you compare it with language learning, people often memorize but don't without understanding. It's like when you just learn, like memorize a few phrases, but then when somebody replies, you kind of like, oh, because you don't really understand. And people quite often learn tools like that. The moment there's a new version, they're like, oh my god, like nothing's how it was, and I hate it. And
Yeah.
so when they get to see beyond all of that, then it just takes the whole
Always cracks me up with
stress out of
language,
it.
right? Because they tell you have to learn you have to learn some key phrases like donde es style baño, right? Like where's the bathroom, which is great. You probably need to know how to ask that, but you also need to know how to understand their response. Otherwise, you're not getting to the bathroom.
That's so true. Yep, yep, yep.
And for the life of me, I'm not sure what it is about Spanish particularly, but they speak so quickly that I can't hear the spaces between their words, so I never understand their response.
Yeah, yeah. No, actually, I had that experience when I first came to, I learned Spanish with this amazing US company, and they called Bilingual America. And so the the couple that runs it, I think they're still there. Like one was from Puerto Rico and the other one from Costa Rica, and so it was all very, and they're kind of very careful to be accent and independent, right? And then I go to the south of Spain, and I was warned, and I didn't believe it. And I said, "Oh, you're not going to understand anything. Oh no, won't be that bad. I'm just fine, right?" And I come to the south of Spain. I come to Granada, and I was like that. I could ask where the bathroom is, and hell would I not understand a single word. It was really. I'm like, I don't know. Did I maybe somehow took a wrong turn and ended up in the wrong country? It was really frustrating. I mean, it has dissolved like after a while, like the ear gets used to it if you then just basically stay in there for long enough.
Yeah.
But it was really funny in the beginning, yeah, for sure.
Cool. So I want to talk a little bit about your driving force, right? And which is the flip side of your common enemy, right? So just like Spider-Man fights to save New York, or Batman fights to save Gotham, or Google fights to index and categorize all the world's information. Um, I want to know what it is that you fight for in your business, your mission, so to speak.
Yeah, the mission is really like in my perfect world, everybody does work they're passionate about, because like going through the motions and counting down the hours till Friday, I don't think there's anything sadder in life. And there's a book by an Australian lady. It's called "The Top Five Regrets of the Dying," and she was a nurse, and so she was with a lot of people in the last months and weeks of their life, and so she started asking, and they started sharing their stories, and the thing that came out at the top was people regretted not having gone for their dreams, right? And that like just hit me in the because my like I immediately thought of my grandma, because she had all these things she wanted to do, and never, like, she went with her music still inside, right? And I'm like, life's too short for that. So I mean, if you stuck somewhere, if you have something you want to create, for God's sake, create it. Like, and if I can support you with bringing that idea to life, then that's what I'll do.
It's exactly why I do everything I do with my family and my wife, my kids, is like, you know, I'm only 36, and I know if I died today, I've done everything I've wanted to do. Like I still have more things I want to do.
That's
If I
awful.
have more
Yes.
opportunity, but like I have done everything in my power to run for every dream I've had.
Yeah.
And that's like what more can you what more can you ask for in life, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like just to make the most of, to not think, oh, I wish I had. And, so many people like, oh, I wish I could have gone to Spain like you. Well, you could, right? And
Yeah,
there you're
you could.
still sitting 20 years later in the same damn job you hated 20 years ago, and I'm thinking it's
Yeah, I
just,
tell people
yeah.
all the time, whatever the like people ask for, what's your biggest piece of advice when I go into other podcasts, and I'm like, take the risk.
Mm,
Whatever that thing is that you want to do that you're afraid of, go do it,
yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because that's going to, you know, what is it? Mark Twain, he says, 20 years from now, you'll regret more of the things you didn't do than the ones you did, right?
Absolutely.
And so sail away from the safe harbor, throw off the bow lines, explore, dream, discover, right? That's one of like my mantra for life. And I know the other one that really struck me, which is something you said, is living. We want people to do what they're passionate about. And it's I can't remember who said it, but it's like what the world needs is more
Yeah,
people who come
Howard
alive.
Thurman. Yeah, yep, yep, yep.
So
It's
go
like,
out and
don't
find.
ask what the world. Yeah, I can't. I get it. I don't get it together now either. It's basically, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive, because what the world needs is people who've come alive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that one.
that's it.
More
That's it.
people who
Yeah,
come alive. And when you find that
yeah,
thing, when you find the thing that makes you come alive, do it.
yeah. Do it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, it's a great a great driving force to have for your business. And I like that you're helping people do that. So I do, since you talked about tools, want to talk a little bit about tools, right? And we talked about this, your hero's tool belt, right? It's a practical portion of our show. Just like every superhero has their tool belt with awesome gadgets like their batarangs or their web slingers or their, fancy big hammer they can spin around and fly with. I want to talk about the top 1 or 2 tools that you couldn't live without in your business. Could be anything from your notepad to your calendar to something you use for marketing tools or product delivery, something you think is essential to getting your job done on a daily basis.
I mean, this is a tough one for me because I could probably come out with 10. But I will go for one that really has changed things for me in unexpected ways. And it's ClickUp. I'm not even fussed about the tool, right? Whether it's like task management on steroids, let's call it. And the only regret I have is I wish I had started to use a tool like that a lot sooner.
Like I had no idea. ClickUp?
ClickUp, yeah.
So why do you think someone should use a task management tool like that?
It actually, it basically does 2 things for you. It frees up headspace in ways that I never expected, right? Because what I like about this one in particular is that it's easy to feed. Because I did try, I had tried other tools before and always found, in the end, then there's the odd thing that you don't put in there, and any system's only as good as the information you feed it, and if it's not complete, it's useless. So that was always everything I tried had always fizzled out, and this one didn't, because it has, little ways to make it easy to feed it. So I get an email, I'm like, oh yeah, I've gotta pop it over to ClickUp, right? I see a website, bookmark it, it's right in there. So which means I know I won't forget stuff, right? So if I'm invited to a podcast, I have to send my bio. Yeah, well, I used to oh Jesus, yeah, and the busier you get, and that's the thing, and that's what I remember from the sewing business, that doesn't go overnight. You get busy slowly you get busier, and one day you're there and you kind of don't know how to do it all. And so I knew I didn't want to go there. So the fact that it's taken care of, it'll come back to me when I need to deal with it. It's just, I can let it go now. I don't have to worry about, have I dropped the ball somewhere, right? And the headspace is incredible. And on top of it, it helps you get stuff done faster, because everything you need to get the thing done is right in there. So I don't have to I have to send, now where was that email? Oh, Google Drive, let's see whether we can find something there. You then don't have to run around, try and find stuff, the information that you need to actually get the job done, because it's all right in there. You've got the email trail there, you've got any attachments you need, everything's right there. So it's actually a lot quicker to get stuff done, and on top of it, you can then work with other people, and it's, I don't even want to count how many hours that saves on top of the peace of mind that it gives. So that's the top tool.
I have to check it out, because I've always been looking for a task management tool that helps me get things done. So I'll check that out.
Yeah, definitely worth checking out.
And now a quick word from our show's sponsor. Hey there, fellow podcaster. Having a weekly audio and video show on all the major online networks that builds your brand, creates fame, and drives sales for your business doesn't have to be hard. I know it feels that way because you've tried managing your show internally and realize how resource intensive it can be. You felt the pain of pouring 8 to 10 hours of work into just getting 1 hour of content published and promoted all over the place. You see the drain on your resources, but you do it anyways because you know how powerful it is. Heck, you've probably even tried some of those automated solutions and ended up with stuff that makes your brand look cheesy and cheap. That's not helping grow your business. Don't give up though. The struggle ends now. Introducing Push Button Podcasts, a done-for-you service that will help you get your show out every single week without you lifting a finger after you've pushed that stop record button. We handle everything else: uploading, editing, transcribing, writing, research, graphics, publication, and promotion, all done by real humans who know, understand, and care about your brand, almost as much as you do. Empowered by our own proprietary technology, our team will let you get back to doing what you love while we handle the rest. Check us out at pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero for 10% off the lifetime of your service with us, and see the power of having an audio and video podcast growing and driving micro celebrity status and business in your niche without you having to lift more than a finger to push that stop record button. Again, that's pushbuttonpodcast.com/hero. See you there. And now, back to the Hero Show. I want to talk then about your own personal heroes, right? So every hero has their mentors, just like, Frodo had Gandalf, or Luke had Obi-Wan Kenobi, or Robert Kiyosaki had his rich dad, or even Spider-Man had his Uncle Ben. Who are some of your heroes? Were they real-life mentors, speakers, authors, maybe peers who were a couple of years ahead of you? And how important were they to what you've accomplished so far?
Yeah, I would have to start with my grandma, even though she never got to do all the things she wanted. Like, there was just that spark of life and adaptability, resilience. There was so much that she had that I always thought, like, yeah, and the adversity she had to deal with. So she's definitely on the list. My dad's there too. And Jamie Smart, who I did coach training with, I'd seen him start his first business, and he's come from an IT background too, right? And sort of to see his evolution, what he's created, and how he goes after his visions. Or definitely there's a little bit like, oh, I want to be like you when I grow up, and in my way. I don't want to kind of do the same thing, but the way he goes about it. And then there were definitely a couple of people who were a couple of years ahead of me, and just seeing them build their business, and it shows me what's possible. Like, when I see one person who does what I'm kind of secretly aiming for, and I've always been like, if there's one person doing it, like, okay, so it's possible. Yep, let's go, right? So, and if I can see that one person who
they can do it,
who
I can
has
do it,
done
right?
it. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
And I always love having the people who are just a little bit ahead of you, especially if you have access to them, because you can always be like, "Hey, what am I doing here?" And they can help you with things that you're messing up. And it's amazing too how supportive the community of entrepreneurs is, because we've all been there, right? We're willing to help the next generation move up, take the next steps.
Yeah, that's so true.
So, as we're nearing the end of the interview here, I want to talk about your guiding principles, right? So one of the things that makes heroes heroic is that they live by a code. For instance, Batman never kills his enemies. He only ever puts them in Arkham Asylum, right? So as we wrap up the interview, I want to talk about the top one, maybe two principles that you live your life by. Maybe something you wish you knew when you first started out on your own hero's journey.
Well, definitely, no is a perfectly complete sentence. Is definitely, like, if it isn't a hell yes, it's a no. That's something that it's a hard learned lesson, but definitely, and always following the pull of inspiration rather than the push of fear.
I like that. Full of inspiration instead of the push of fear. Because it forces you to think about where you want to go and not be reactionary to what's happening.
Yeah, and you come from a different space. You come from that, creative space, and there's flow, and there's, creativity, and there's ease, and, and that's a whole different way of going about creating something than if you're like, oh, I must reach this milestone and I've got to whatever, right?
Yeah, and I found that one of the things that's really useful for, because reactivity tends to be out of fear. And so when things happen, you're like, oh, I need to get this taken care of. I need to do this, or I need to talk to this person, or I need to do these other things. A lot of times your first initial response is like a fear response. So I always like to sit on it for a day and just sort of let your creative mind get to it. And you realize, okay, maybe I can approach it this other way, or do this other thing. Or you find out from the other person that it's actually not an emergency, or it's not a big problem. Or there was just a miscommunication. And a lot of times when you give yourself the space to approach something with inspiration, it helps a lot.
Absolutely.
So that's a great place to wrap our interview, but I do finish every interview with a simple challenge I call the Heroes Challenge. And I do this to help get access to stories I might not otherwise find on my own. So the question is simple. Do you have someone in your life or in your network that you think has a cool entrepreneurial story? Who are they? First names are fine. And why do you think they should come share their story here on the Hero Show? First person that comes to mind for you.
It's Angela Durant, and she well, we were friends. We met during coach training. She was a friend, and she was a client, and now we're business partners. And I couldn't admire this woman more. Like she was born sort of onto this. She comes up from a family of, there was basically the famous uncle, and so she was basically born on stage and shoved on there in, at a very young age, and comes from that stage performer background and built several businesses. I don't want to tell the whole story, but then like 10 years ago, her husband was diagnosed with cancer. So that's been, in the game while she's building her businesses. So she's got an amazing story, and she's definitely an example for resilience and kindness, and, and having this attitude of getting stuff done despite what's actually going on behind in the background. So she definitely deserves a spot on the hero team.
Well, we'll reach out to Angela later and see if we can get her to come on the show. They don't always say yes, but when they do, we get cool stories that we can share. So in comic books, there's always the crowd of people who are clapping and cheering for the acts of heroism. So analogous to that, as we close, is where can people find you if they want your help in the future? Where can they light up the bat signal, so to speak? And I think more importantly is who is the right type of person to actually do that. So where and who?
Yeah. So where is just tamingthetechmonster.com. It's, there's basically access to a whole bunch of free resources, including a copy of my book. And so you're then in my world, and I'm easy to get in touch with from there. And the people who are the right people for that are people who are coaches, therapists who want to go beyond the therapy practice and want to bring their content online and want to offer their services online, so they can reach more people and impact more people without spinning their wheels like crazy, and find that the tech feels like a jungle. So that's basically the right people for it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on today, Anke, and sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it. I had a good time, just hearing everything that you've been through and the crazy journey you've been on to get where you are now. So do you have any final words of wisdom for my audience before I hit this stop record button?
Well, there's actually one thing that I always love to, and there's a book title in there. So there's I always say, don't try and control the ripples, just throw the stone.
That's good too. Thank you very much, Anke. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.